Hi everyone, welcome to Xapo Talks. Just letting you know that we'll start very shortly, just giving it a minute or two for our guest to turn up. We spoke to him 5 minutes ago, so he is coming. Thank you, hold on, and we will start properly soon. Okay, we do have our guest here now. I'm going to start the broadcast in about a minute. If you just joined, thank you for joining us for Xapo Talks. We're going to discuss how to make Bitcoin a mainstream payment method very soon. Okay, I think we're good to go. So, hello. Hi, Carol. I'm going to introduce you very shortly. And also, Anton's here. Good to have you, Anton. Just to get us started, hi, wherever you are, and welcome to episode 3 of Xapo Talks. Thank you for joining us. For those who haven't been part of a Xapo Talk session before, we use these broadcasts as an opportunity to talk about what's going on in the world of Bitcoin and also to share the latest updates from Xapo Bank. So last time round, we talked about stable coins with BVNK. We stay on the topic of money movement this time, as we're going to look at the adoption of Bitcoin as a mainstream payment method. Now, a few data points to get us started. Always good to have some numbers to back these things up. These numbers are from a study between NFT Evening and Storable. They found that in 2024, 12,834 merchants worldwide accepted crypto payments. That's crypto, not specifically Bitcoin, which is roughly a 50% increase from 2023. The majority of these, well, not the majority, but the largest cohort was in Brazil, where there was 1,292. But Europe as a continent leads the way with almost 6,000 businesses accepting crypto in 2024. And 88% of these businesses reported higher revenue after starting to accept crypto payments. We are obviously just getting started. These are shoots rather than blossoms. And again, figures for crypto rather than Bitcoin. Currently, Bitcoin's responsible for far less than 1% of global payments. I'm joined by two people who expect that to change for sure. Firstly, Anton Irazov, my Xapo Bank colleague. Anton, it is great to have you here. Just to ask you a question, when you hear numbers like the ones I just threw out there, what do you think?
Ian, I'll tell you what I feel before answering what I think. I feel excitement. I feel like we are definitely moving at the right direction because crypto is making people to use instant to have opportunity to transact money instantly with very low cost. And then in terms of what I think, I'm definitely not surprised because we are seeing those trends also happening on Xapo side. We have a very serious increase in terms of transactions happening on top of the Bitcoin network, and I'm actually quite excited to share some of the statistics very soon when we enter the real discussion.
Amazing. Thanks, Anton. Looking forward to that too. And it's also time to introduce our guest, Carel van Wyk. Carel was a co-founder at crypto investment platform Luno, and he's now the CEO of MoneyBadger, which is bringing Bitcoin payments to South African merchants and consumers via QR codes and the Lightning Network. So, Carel, great to have you with us. How are you doing today?
Thanks. Yeah, just recovering from a little bit of a cold, but I'm fine. Doing well.
So you sound pretty good. You know, here's some bad colds. You're doing good. Let's start with a really obvious question because you've got a good story to share here, Carel. For those who don't know, like what is MoneyBadger? What do you guys do?
MoneyBadger is a Bitcoin payments provider. So we sit, we're basically like plumbers. We say that there's a lot of shops and merchants out there, and they already have existing payment solutions. And then on the other side, we've got a lot of wallets out there, Bitcoin wallets, Lightning wallets. And why can't you pay with Lightning at these merchants? All it takes is to wire up the two, and then it works. So that's what we do. You connect Bitcoin wallets to merchants, and then you can pay anywhere with your Bitcoin.
Yeah, makes sense. And if I can ask a pretty basic question, when merchants accept the money, can they choose, how they accept it? Can they accept it in fiat? Are they accepting it in Bitcoin? What do people go for there?
We should go into that. There's a longer answer, but the short answer is they can choose, and we do have merchants that is currently being settled in Bitcoin, but the vast majority of them at the moment is being settled in fiat.
Got you. And if I could get Anton in here, obviously when we're talking about merchant payments, we're talking about everyday stuff, which isn't, often how you see Bitcoin moved. I mean, from what you know from our kind of Xapo perspective, Anton, do you see people really using Bitcoin for everyday payments at the moment?
So it really depends on the country. Different countries have different patterns. What we are seeing right now happening on Xapo that members residing in Brazil are really using Bitcoin for local payments. Pretty much is the same picture in South Africa. And I believe this is because we have a very strong infrastructure there, probably thanks to Carel for South Africa particularly. But when you have the right infrastructure, people are always going to use Bitcoin simply because it's faster, cheaper. And also merchants are like much more incentivized to offer Bitcoin because for them it's a much cheaper option than using, for example, Visa or Mastercard for accepting payments. So it really depends on the country and depends on the infrastructure in this country. But because Xapo is having customers from pretty much every country in the world, I can confidently say that countries with the right infrastructure are really like where our members are using Lightning for payments. Now in Europe, it's slightly different picture because what we are seeing, and that's very also interesting pattern. Some members are actually resistant to spend their Bitcoin for buying groceries. Probably because they assume and they know that the Bitcoin price is appreciating 40% every year on average for the past 12 years. Now this is like psychological phenomenon. Like I don't want to spend my Bitcoin even though it's faster and cheaper to purchase some groceries. But again, this is mainly in Europe, in South Africa, in Brazil, and a few more countries. Like for example, Chile. This is definitely not what we're seeing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Carel, do you want to chime in there? Because we talked about this a bit before, didn't we?
Sure. So maybe another part of the reason people wouldn't spend Bitcoin, regardless of whether they believe the price will go up, is just simply because if you're spending with your card, you've got all these wonderful reward schemes, and then you get like free stuff as you spend. And these schemes don't really exist in Bitcoin land yet. So maybe that's another reason why people stick to the incentives that they know. But as for spending a Bitcoin, not spending Bitcoin because the price is going to go up, well, you should probably just have more Bitcoin then. Like, why do you have fiat if you think the price is going to go up on Bitcoin?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that there's more to it than just money. I mean, you were mentioning Brazil as being a prime area for Bitcoin spending, and at the same time, Brazil is also a nation that has a very effective digital payments network in fiat with PIX. So there's more to it than simply just digitization and ease of spending. There is a whole load more, and I think we should get into that later. But I think while we're back on the topic of MoneyBadger, I mean, Carel, what are the biggest misconceptions around what you do? Because I can imagine people look at your offering and probably think it does things that it doesn't, or probably misunderstand what you're doing.
The biggest misconception, I would say, is tied to the fact that relatively few people know about the Lightning Network, Bitcoin Lightning, which is what we use and what we rely on to facilitate these payments between wallets and merchants. So, if you don't know about Lightning, or you're not aware that it's actually being used by millions of people in the world, then you'll think, well, how can I purchase groceries with an on-chain Bitcoin transaction if I'm going to be spending a lot of money on network fees? Well, that's no longer a reality. You can Anton spoke, or you spoke about the rapid payments that's cheap. Well, you get that with Lightning, right? So we don't host the wallet service. We don't collect your funds first and then you can spend from our wallet to our merchant network. We wire up our network of merchants natively using this magical protocol, payment protocol called Lightning, which has a lot of benefits above and beyond just being cheap and fast and global. We can potentially go into that if we want, but Lightning is really like this magical thing that gives us the ability to do fast and cheap payments on to our merchants.
Yeah, got you. Well, we should dwell on the Lightning Network. You're right to mention that, because it's one of the many payments methods we facilitate at Xapo, and we've got Anton, who's our expert at that in this particular area. So, I mean, Anton, how are our members interacting with the Lightning Network, and in what ways is it impacting the way people are spending money?
So what I'm seeing from the data is that we have 20% increase in terms of Xapo members depositing Bitcoin through Lightning. Xapo Bank, for everyone listening, probably you don't know, but Xapo Bank was the first bank or regulated financial institution to enable Lightning Network 3 years ago, and we did this not because we were like expecting some crazy volumes, but because we really believe that Satoshi created Bitcoin in order to make Bitcoin as a medium of exchange for everything, for making money movement easy, cheap, and fast. And we really wanted to contribute to making his vision, to fulfill Satoshi vision, by literally enabling everyone to transact money with near zero cost internationally. And back then, the Lightning was still like relatively a new concept. There wasn't any exchanges, like for example Binance, Coinbase. They were not supporting Lightning transactions. We were actually the first one supporting Lightning transactions, and since then we really see like growth pretty much every quarter from Xapo Bank members. But this growth is there are actually two reasons why this growth is happening. The first one is because like now we have more infrastructure, more exchanges, more fintech apps, self-custody wallets that are actually supporting Lightning, but also because people are like getting familiar with how Lightning Network is working, and we have more and more people that now are buying Bitcoin, and then they are discovering the benefits of the Lightning Network. So the trends are very clear. As I mentioned, we have a quarter-on-quarter increase, 20% since the summer, and yeah, I would say that's what our members are right now doing with Lightning, with Lightning Network.
Yeah, and it's not new. I think that's the other thing, isn't it? Lightning's been around for a good few years now, so a big part of it is perhaps trust, both for individuals and also merchants accepting payments through it. I want to look at, we've talked a bit about international variances, but seeing as we've got, a South Africa-focused provider here, I think it's worth focusing on what makes South Africa in particular a good market for accepting Bitcoin payments. I mean, there's all sorts of things we could look at here, Carel. When it comes to money acceptance, it's not just technology, is it? There's infrastructure, there's economic reasons, there are cultural reasons why people are different with their money. So would you say that South Africa is particularly well suited to the growth of Bitcoin payments? And if so, why?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. For essentially the reasons that you just mentioned. I think the way that we engage with money in South Africa is different from the way that people engage with money in Europe and the US. If you're a US citizen, your money is the global reserve currency, and your expectations of your money and your store of value is different. Whereas if you're sitting in South Africa, we just look north across our border to Zimbabwe, and we've got this fantastic example of hyperinflation due to bad government policies. And then that fear that instills in us, that sticks with us our whole lives, and we think about money differently, and what is a fiat store of value. And so when you start learning about Bitcoin, I think it intuitively it makes sense very quickly to South Africans. So that's one thing. And then also South Africa, it is one of the richest countries in Africa. So as a market, there's people with wealth and money. Although we see Bitcoin adoption across all LSMs, there's like a big enough market that we can, have interesting data around Bitcoin adoption and specifically Bitcoin payments. But there's like a lot of other things. Just we can talk about this for hours. But another thing that excites me in South Africa in particular is that a large part of our economy is what they call informal, right? And so what that means is it's primarily cash-based. There's a lot of reliance on cash in our country. And this isolates us to some degree because the effective distance that cash is effective is about as far as you can, hold out your arm. So there's this massive potential in the informal economy for the adoption of electronic cash, I believe. And that is what excites me. Like I've had so many people say, would you ever consider immigrating from South Africa and leaving behind the place and running away from the crime and all the issues that we have here? And I've always said no, absolutely not, because this is the place. This is like ground zero for Bitcoin adoption in the world.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point. Also, for those listening who've noticed an improvement in my sound quality, I've changed my microphone. Yeah, I mean, you make a good point. It's not just in South Africa. There was a great piece I saw from the Associated Press recently that was looking at Bitcoin acceptance in Kenya, in slum towns in Soweto. Our roadside vegetable merchants were accepting Bitcoin payments. People that didn't previously have access to banking facilities. So I think when we analyze Bitcoin as a payment method, we need to consider, the wider scenarios around why people are using it, and it's maybe not always the things that we expect it to be. So yeah, South Africa is a particularly interesting case. I mean, Anton, to tie it back to the data we have on international spending, do you notice anything different about South African members that we've got, or no?
So South Africa is in top 5 countries for Lightning Network transactions from Xapo or to Xapo respectively. But what I want to highlight here, which I believe Carel will agree with me, in order to make Bitcoin a mainstream payment method, you need to have the infrastructure both on the merchants but also on the retail side. And I can make a very simple comparison to the internet. I don't know if anyone is aware what is HTTP or how the HTTP protocol is working. I assume almost no one knows. I don't know what is HTTP and how it's working, but when I open my browser, I know I can transmit information internationally instantly. And that's what should happen with Bitcoin in order to become a mainstream payment method in South Africa, but pretty much everywhere around the world. You should open your fintech app or your bank, and then you should be able to transact, for example, US dollar from United States to Mexico or from United States to Philippines. And this transaction should happen natively on top of the best payment protocol in the world that was ever created, called Bitcoin. And that's when the Bitcoin will really become a mainstream when you can make international transactions instantly with near zero fees 24/7 and rely on the Bitcoin. And maybe the average user, they may not even know that they're using a Bitcoin as a protocol. They may just want to make international transaction. And that's actually what happened with the internet. It really exploded after the browser was created, because this was the window for everyone to use the internet. And I can compare this right now with the infrastructure that we need to build on top of Lightning Network, which I believe now Carel is doing amazing work in South Africa, and on Xapo side we're also doing our best in order to ensure people around the world can transact instantly 24/7 with near zero cost. Because right now, for the Bitcoiners that are joining the space right now, they need to first study Lightning. They need to figure it out how to do a self custody on this Lightning. What is self custody wallet? What is like a hot? What is cold wallet? How really to rebalance some channels on the Lightning Network, which is a pain. And I believe this is like the blocker right now. But once you have the right infrastructure and you can make international transactions 24/7 settled on top of the Lightning network and the Bitcoin subsequently, this is when we can speak about like full mainstream payment method. But yeah, we have to keep building both on Xapo and also on Carel side.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's more than just making the payments happen, though. Is there any other infrastructure you would point out to that needs to be built, or other kind of solutions or products that you think will really help boost mainstream adoption, Anton?
I see some amazing developments right now. Recently, SoFi, they are like quite popular United States digital bank. They have 9 million customers. They announced that they're going to settle international transactions on top of Bitcoin, which means there are 9 million customers that they transact internationally without even knowing that they are using Bitcoin, or without knowing that their transaction will be settled on top of Bitcoin. Then you have Nubank in Brazil, 115 million customers. They're pretty much exploring the same to happen on top of the Brazilian real, like to settle on top of Bitcoin. But again, like those are just two examples in the United States, also in Brazil, and you have Xapo. We are also investing heavily on this, making Bitcoin a natural settlement layer for international transactions. But again, like for the average customer, they need to find those three companies, and they need more. Like we need more partners around the world supporting this. And then I can assure you, no one is going to use the traditional payment methods right now. For example, Swift, where you have to pay $25-30, wait 1 or 2 business days, and then if you make the transaction on Friday, you may receive it on the recipient may receive it on Tuesday, which is ridiculous. It's not how money should move in 2025 when you have Bitcoin. So we are still early, but I believe we're doing our best to fulfill Satoshi vision, because again, Satoshi created Bitcoin as a peer-to-peer digital cash. So yeah, we will get there. I'm absolutely confident.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads I could ask you on that, especially around things like what you just said about Swift is a pretty big claim. But I think we'll stick with Carel's work for now. I mean, Carel, like looking at the blockers that we've got, right? I mean, Anton's talking about infrastructure, but you're there building it, every day. You're speaking to the merchants that are facilitating Bitcoin payments, and also the various other infrastructure providers that are needed to make it happen. What are the biggest challenges that you face right now in trying to get merchants and consumers to be able to spend Bitcoin?
I'd like to just differentiate a little bit between the different approaches that you can take to get merchants to adopt Bitcoin acceptance, and because the problems that you face would be different in each scenario. So probably the most well-known way is you walk into a shop, hopefully one that you frequent, and you convince the owner that you want to pay in Bitcoin and they should accept Bitcoin, and then hopefully you continue spending Bitcoin there. Otherwise, they'll stop accepting it and say, "What was this nonsense?" And that's really like the best approach, I think, because it's the grassroots community approach, and the global army of Bitcoin volunteers go out every day and they drive this mission. But then the way that we do it is we have a commercial model, and we will either strategically onboard a merchant. So that would be a merchant with wide reach. In 2022, we onboarded Pick n Pay, which is the second largest retailer in Africa. It's got basically like an outlet, a grocery outlet in almost every town in South Africa. So they've got massive reach. More recently, we onboarded Bootlegger, which is a national coffee chain and restaurant. But then for us to really get wide adoption, we go to in South Africa. Another reason why South Africa is a good country for Bitcoin payments adoption specifically, we've got a fairly mature payments ecosystem already in South Africa. So we've got a number of payment providers, and a number of them are mobile payment providers. So that means they predate Apple Pay and Google Pay and all this stuff where you can now just tap your phone. Where in the past, if you wanted to make a mobile payment, typically the merchant would display some kind of like QR code, right? Mm-hmm. And so these QR code payment options, they seem to have fallen by the wayside to some degree, thanks to Google and Apple Pay and all of this stuff becoming more prevalent. They're still active in tens of thousands of shops across South Africa. And so our approach is to go to these mobile payment operators using these QR codes and using this interface, which is sort of a bit more familiar to Bitcoin wallets and Lightning wallets. And we're saying, okay, let's use this mechanism. And now when we talk about the challenges, it's a little bit different, because we don't actually have to go out and convince individual merchants to accept Bitcoin, but we now have to go out and convince essentially partners in the payment space, that they should add Bitcoin as an option to their existing offering. And there, I think it's mostly been a matter of a change in mind shift. So, with previously the belief was that Bitcoin is only a store of value. People only use it for savings and investment, and they won't use it for payments. And so there was a lot of reluctance from the payment providers to integrate Bitcoin payments because they said, how do we justify this investment? Well, that has been changing. That view has been changing over the past couple of years. I mean, Pick and Pay, I think, played a major role in that to demonstrate that people do go out to retailers that do buy their groceries with Bitcoin, they do spend it. And now the payment providers, especially the mobile payment providers, are looking at this with new eyes, and they're saying, well, can we benefit from this? Can we sort of replay market share with our QR mechanism by attracting Bitcoin spenders? Because if you're spending Bitcoin or via Lightning, whatever, then you're going to be using QR. You're not going to be using tap to pay. You're not going to be using card. And now suddenly we've got a tailwind where previously we had a headwind, and that's been working really well for us. But basically, long answer, very short. It's perception, and the perception is that people don't spend Bitcoin, and that's been the major blocker for us in the past. Luckily, that's changing.
Yeah, definitely. And interesting you mentioned the types of payment. I mean, QR codes, for instance. I'm in the UK, as you can probably tell from my accent, and you don't see a great amount of QR code payment here. Whereas I know in many parts of Asia, it's still a very dominant kind of prevalent payment method. So these things can all impact adoption. I guess the other question I've got in terms of your work with retailers, Carel, is the conversations that you have with them. What work do you do with them to understand how Bitcoin payments are impacting their bottom line? I mean, an example I can think of here is for those that are accepting payments in Bitcoin, are they doing that with the kind of assumption that is going to grow in value and that they can build a reserve of Bitcoin as they accept payments?
So we should really differentiate between those merchants that, so for merchants accepting Bitcoin, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are being settled in Bitcoin.
Yeah, of course.
And we need to differentiate between these two because there's a very different. In general, let me just side comment here. In general, it's very hard to put Bitcoin spenders or merchants accepting Bitcoin into like a single box. What we see is a vast amount of diversity across the profiles of people spending and accepting Bitcoin. Right. So to that question of how do we engage with a merchant, and how do we, what's the conversation we have, what's the benefit to them, basically? That's the question, right?
Yeah.
So in our case, most of our merchants are accepting Bitcoin and they're receiving fiat settlement. So let's talk about that case first. Like I said, now it's for most merchants, our relationship is actually with their existing payment provider, and those merchants are happy because they're getting basically free access to a new market, and they get featured in this market. They get they get exposure. You can see this even Bitcoin Magazine today tweeted about or made a post on X about one of our people going to Vida Coffee and buying coffee there, and it gets massive engagement. And Vida basically is getting free marketing all over the place now. But they don't actually engage with us directly. We're engaging with them via one of the existing providers. So in that case, they're quite happy. They just get access to free market, they get free exposure, free marketing, and that we've got this army of Bitcoiners in South Africa that now suddenly go there and spend their Bitcoin there instead of at other places. So that there's actually no conversation. It's very easy. Then for merchants where we engage with them directly, like Pick and Pay, like Bootlegger, that's very much a marketing angle as well. So we say, look, we're going to promote this heavily within the communities. We're going to be working with major wallet providers, like you mentioned them earlier, Binance, Luno, Valor, etc. We're going to be promoting your stores to these to their user bases. So you'll basically, like, just imagine you get a mailer going out advertising your shop to like millions of people, and you basically get that for free marketing. So they're also very happy. It's a marketing thing. And I feel like I'm just talking way too long here, but
no, it's interesting. It's interesting. I'm genuinely listening. I'm just speaking of merchant examples. I mean, Anton, am I not mistaken in thinking you have heard from some merchants based in Gibraltar, where Xapo Bank's based?
Right. So I'm not allowed to say the merchant name because they were operating with the franchise model, but it was one extremely popular coffee chain. They are pretty much everywhere across the UK. And because Xapo is also based in Gibraltar, we had our headquarters there. Very naturally, we have a lot of customers from Gibraltar. And this coffee chain, they started accepting Lightning payments for literally buying coffee on a daily basis. And they were, I believe, the first one in Gibraltar. They were quite happy also to see a lot of people using Xapo app in order to buy coffee with Bitcoin. But then it became extremely popular. Like in Gibraltar, everyone heard about, hey, do you know that you can buy coffee with Bitcoin? And people really started doing this. And then the company Mahler, which is like the headquarters of this coffee chain, when they heard about this, and this was literally 3 years ago, they said, we're going to take your license to the owner of this franchise coffee. They literally knocked on his door and said, if you don't stop accepting Bitcoin, we're going to take your license because Bitcoin is risky, crypto is risky. We don't want to be associated with Bitcoin. And this can create only trouble for our company. So that's one example how crazy it was 3 years ago when literally people started using Lightning and Bitcoin payments more for daily purchases. So that's it's still like in my mind how crazy this was in 2020.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. And I think there's a bigger picture here. It's almost worth bringing this into kind of broader themes because, one thing, Anton, I know you've talked about a lot is the evolution of Bitcoin from a kind of store of value into, getting towards being more of a medium of exchange. Carel and I have discussed this as well. But yeah, I think it would be really interesting to get your thoughts, Anton, on how you see this trend evolving because we obviously need to spend to keep the network going, but then also how Bitcoin is perceived by regulators, by people dealing with these merchants, is going to be based on how people are actually using Bitcoin. So how do you see this evolution, Anton, of Bitcoin from kind of digital gold to spending network?
Yeah, so right now we're in this digital gold rush for everyone to acquire as much Bitcoin as possible. Actually, the illiquid Bitcoin is decreasing on every quarter since 2021. Literally every quarter there are on-chain metrics tracking the liquid and illiquid blockchain supply, and more and more Bitcoins are getting illiquid, which means they haven't been moved for over 1 year. What this is showing is that usually people are not very willing to spend Bitcoin, but also this depends on what I shared earlier. Once you have the right infrastructure, you may not even know that you're using Bitcoin to make international transactions or even buying some groceries, because what you care as an average user is you want your transaction to be cheap and fast, literally instant. So once we have this infrastructure, I really believe the Bitcoin will the Bitcoin usage and adoption will skyrocket. And this is actually the first order effect of having the right infrastructure. Of course, the second order effect, which most of the people cares about, is the Bitcoin price. But at the end, Satoshi didn't create Bitcoin in order to speculate with the price it created, because Satoshi really saw and envisioned a real problem, and he knew how to solve it. And also one important point is right now with the Lightning, this is the most used way to transact Bitcoin internationally. There are according to McKinsey, there are 9.2 billion money transactions happening every day. 9.2 billion according to McKinsey. Now imagine once we migrate 10-20% of those transactions to be on Bitcoin. Now we are talking about few billion transactions happening on Bitcoin every single day,
Mhm.
and that's where we can see really like the Bitcoin winning and the Bitcoin becoming a mainstream payment method, or just a method to settle everything as a medium of exchange. And we're getting there. We are getting there, and that's why I'm so excited also to collaborate with Carel and contribute every day for Bitcoin success.
I'm for sure. And to answer, and sorry, to actually build up on what you just said there, when Carel and I were discussing this earlier, Carel, you said something I found really interesting. You said it's a matter of urgency for us to start spending in Bitcoin. Now, could you elaborate on that for everyone listening?
So yeah, I say this, and then people get very upset with me. But I can back it up. And you also mentioned this in terms of sort of the way that the world evolves. You can say, I'm not going to spend Bitcoin today, but I might spend it tomorrow. But tomorrow you might not be able to. And why do I say that? Well, let me read you a quote. This is from the South African Deputy Reserve Bank Governor. And he said, this is in 2022. This is just before we launched the Pick and Pay national rollout. So he said, we are not intent on regulating Bitcoin as a currency, as you can't really walk into a shop and use it to buy something. Instead, our view has changed to regulating Bitcoin as a financial asset. There is a need to regulate it and bring it into the mainstream, but in a way that balances the hype and with the investor protection that needs to be there. So not intent to regulate the currency because you can't walk into a shop and use it to buy something. So if that is the perception, is that people don't spend Bitcoin and that you can't use it as a means of payment or medium of exchange, regulators will design regulations and governance around the investment use case, and it'll make it more difficult to spend in the future. And Adam said this as well, that business that started accepting Bitcoin and then got threatened having their license revoked because unfortunately, the way that big companies operate is they are constantly concerned about risk mitigation. And so if the regulations are not designed in a way that gives them comfort that their risk is sufficiently mitigated when they start accepting Bitcoin and maybe in the future start holding Bitcoin as well, that it can never happen because that risk model just never gets developed and it gets pushed into a different direction. And so to me, spending Bitcoin is a form of activism that you can engage in today. Yes, maybe it's going to be a little bit more difficult to use in your card. Maybe you don't get your loyalty and reward programs on your card scheme, but you're actually making a difference for every person that starts spending Bitcoin. That market of spenders go up and the perception changes. It's all about the perception. That's what I said earlier as well. That's our biggest problem, is that people have the wrong perception about Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. And quickly, for everyone listening, we're going to do the Q&A part of this. Do send any questions if you have them. This is an AMA if you want it to be. If not, then I'm happy to keep pitching questions to the guys. But if you do have some questions, send them through. There are all sorts of things we can get into, Carel, such as the need to spend Bitcoin to uphold the network when we get to that point, and so on. But you touched upon, cards, and things like rewards, look at something like Amex versus spending in Bitcoin. If we can look at this from your perspective and go longer term with MoneyBadger and perhaps other providers such as yourselves, what do you think Bitcoin providers will be able to do? Do you think you'll ever be able to compete with these kind of rewards providers, or is it more a case of focusing on the kind of revolutionary aspect of being a Bitcoin spending network?
So your question is, how do we compete with card?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Let me tell you the future. This is something not a lot of people know about me, but I can see the future. So I'm going to tell you what the future looks like. Firstly, important to have patience. This is a step-by-step thing. And when we say, this is still early days, it really is. And people get impatient. They say, well, Bitcoin's had already 15, 16 years to operate. How can it still be early? But it is. So here's what's going to happen. For mainstream adoption, we'll start with these bridges between Bitcoin wallets, Lightning wallets, and either payment providers, like we're doing here in South Africa with MoneyBadger, or with these national payment programs like Pix and UPI, or even like M-Pesa in Kenya. And these bridges will start getting built, and we'll start seeing massive amounts of merchants accepting Bitcoin, not necessarily being settled in Bitcoin, but they're going to be accepting Bitcoin in the near to midterm. Then what we're going to start seeing is we're going to start seeing big wallet providers start offering incentive schemes over these networks. Because these wallet providers, just like any bank, they want to retain their customers. They don't want to lose customers to competitors, and they want to attract new customers. And one of the ways they can do this is the way that banks do it. This is a model that's been working for decades, is they offer incentive schemes when you spend, right? So the wallet providers will start doing this, and then we'll start seeing a little bit of a flywheel effect with more and more and more people spending their Bitcoin and other crypto tokens because they get some benefit, some incentive. And then what's going to happen is merchants are going to start paying attention to this. They're going to start seeing increase in volumes of Bitcoin payments being spent at their stores. Maybe they're still receiving fiat settlement, but they're going to start noticing and paying attention. And then the Bitcoin army can go out there and they can start orange pilling merchants very easily. They can say, well, you're already accepting Bitcoin. Why don't you just hold on to it? And then look at the benefits. Just read up on the advantages of a proper store of value and a hard form of money. And then at that point, I think we're going to start seeing like a massive increase in adoption for Bitcoin as a medium of exchange as merchants start offering incentive schemes, basically offering discounts for people to pay in Bitcoin because they want to attract those customers. They want more Bitcoin, right? How can I get more Bitcoin? Well, just have people pay me. And then I think at that point, it's basically game over. GG, we win. And we'll take over the world.
Don't get enough GGs in this conversation, I've got to say. I love that. So yeah, I guess Bitcoin in that context is the reward, which is a fascinating one. We've got a few comments coming through.
Ian.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, jump in. Can I? Yeah, please do.
Just a comment, because that's a very interesting point which Carel is mentioning. But I would like to challenge one of the statements here, because Carel, you're seeing this party to the win as people spending Bitcoin, like realizing they're transacting Bitcoin. But don't you think like in order Bitcoin to really become a mainstream, people may not even realize that they're using Bitcoin when they are like transacting? It wasn't like this the way for Bitcoin to really become a mainstream? Because how many people right now have Bitcoin, and how many of those people actually know how really to spend their Bitcoin? Because even if merchants are offering incentives, you still need to be educated. But I think it should be a world where you have Bitcoin and then you spend it without even noticing you are spending it, like completely native flow of money, similar to how it's working right now. Because I can assure you, no one knows what is the Visa or Mastercard network.
Yes.
Just tap the card and transaction is there, done.
I think that's a great point. And I've always, people tell me like, when do you stop working? And I say, well, I'll stop working when Bitcoin becomes so boring and everyday that you're using it without even knowing that you're using it. So I fully agree on that point. And there's a number of ways that you can see or view this thing, and our adoption will end up working. And that's definitely like one of the ways that mainstream adoption will happen, I'm sure, because it's just simply, like you say, a better settlement rate. Maybe one comment on that. For a payment provider, a big problem is what they call counterparty risk. So the way that the payment actually works, it's a two-step process. Cards work like this. When you pay somebody, you're not actually sending them money. I know it sounds funny, but you're not actually sending somebody money when you're paying them. When you pay somebody, there's a interaction whereby a promise is exchanged. A promise between the source of the funds and the recipient of the funds via the network that the funds will eventually be settled to the recipient. And then that settlement process is a separate process. It typically happens maybe at the end of the day, maybe on the next day, the recipient will be settled for the previous day's transactions or for the full day's transactions. That's the traditional model, typically. Now, suddenly we've got Lightning, and we can have instantaneous settlement. So that means there's no more promises being kept anywhere. There's no risk in the system that one of the people that's issuing promises disappears, and then the counterparty risk disappears as well.
Got you. And let's go back to the question that we have here. And it's not really a question, but Ian Wood, thank you for sending this through. A comment, he said, I would gladly accept Bitcoin in my sport business, but integration into existing systems seems far too onerous for the amount of transactions it would actually be used for. And I think I can turn that into a question for Carel. Is there a particular size of merchant or retailer that Bitcoin payments is made for? Is it a fair? It's a fair point to raise that it's difficult to do this as a small merchant. Of course it is, but is it easy or practical for smaller merchants to facilitate Bitcoin payments?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think I think maybe there's kind of two ways to look at it. Firstly, if you are somebody that you have a shop, you're a merchant, and you're also very passionate about Bitcoin, you're not going to worry too much if you get like one transaction every month or every few months even. You won't worry. And to have a Bitcoin wallet and receive Bitcoin payments costs you nothing. So I think maybe what we're talking about here is people saying, do I need to go through the effort of educating myself, and it's going to be worth it if I only get a few transactions? Maybe not. What we've seen also is that this can go wrong. It goes badly when people go out and they're very passionate, and they go in orange pill merchants. They go through all the effort of setting them up, and then nobody goes and spends Bitcoin there, and then the signs fade, and it just stops working. So let's flip the model around. This is our approach. So we say, well, okay, we are partnering with these existing payment service providers. So firstly, you can accept Bitcoin. You don't have to even know about it, right? But at some point, maybe you become interested in being settled in Bitcoin, and then actually you can start receiving settlement in Bitcoin for all of the payments that's coming in, not only Bitcoin payments. So you can get your card payment settled in Bitcoin as well. Then it's the merchant's choice. They just decide. They can even do a split. They can say, I want 10% in Bitcoin, or how much ever percentage in Bitcoin. And then they're like fully in control, and it's not a matter of we'll have Bitcoin payments coming in drips and drabs. They can decide what is the settlement percentage that they want, and it's a different dynamic.
Got you. And we are pretty much out of time, but what I want to do is finish this session by answering the question we had.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
No, I no longer have a deadline.
So, you don't? Okay.
No.
So in that case, let's answer this question in more detail then. I was going to try and press you for a 2 or 3 sentence answer on a very difficult question, which is pretty much the thing we're looking at today, right? How to make Bitcoin a mainstream payment method. If you could kind of sum it up and wrap it up, could you tell us first Carel and then Anton, what needs to happen for Bitcoin to become a mainstream payment method? And then secondly, what you're doing to make it happen. I know you've already said, but it'd be good to get a bit of a summary to finish. So Carel, off to you first.
It's a matter of faith and belief. People need to start believing that Bitcoin is money. It's like Neo in the Matrix when he starts to wake up. He didn't believe initially, but then he starts to believe, and when he finally gets the realization, he starts believing, everything changes. That's like fundamentally the way that we do it. I know it sounds very like up in the air and philosophical, but the reality is that we've got thousands and thousands of people working on this problem every single day. And we just need to change people's hearts and minds. And then it will happen. It's not the technology is not the blocker. The business cases, that's not the blocker. The commercials, that's not the blocker. Legals and compliance and regulations, that's not the blocker. The blocker is the way that people see the world and the way that they see Bitcoin. I know that's not giving you a straightforward answer, but if I have to give you a concrete answer, it's that people like us, we are driving it from a commercial angle. I think we've got a good strategy. Xapo has its own strategy. The community has a different strategy, and everybody's working together towards this common goal.
Great stuff. Thank you. And Anton, same to you. You know, in your perspective, what we need to do to make Bitcoin mainstream, and what Xapo is doing to make that happen.
There are two aspects here. The first one is having the right infrastructure, which means that you should be and you must be able to seamlessly transact funds either to merchants or internationally, and everything should be settled on top of Bitcoin. It may be like traditional fiat a payment. It may be stable coins, but again, it should be settled on top of Bitcoin, and people around the world, like the average person, they should just press the button and transaction it's supposed to happen seamlessly. What we do at Xapo site, where we are ensuring that your Bitcoin is protected and you can have a quick access for your Bitcoin, which meaning that your Bitcoin can work for you. Because at the end, it's not just buying Bitcoin, put in a cold storage somewhere and forget about it. That's why Bitcoin was not created. It was created to be a international peer-to-peer cash system. And then there is another aspect which I kind of hope to not happen, or maybe I hope to happen. To be honest, I have mixed feelings. That's about the reason for people to interact with Bitcoin, because you go to Argentina, go to Turkey, go to some countries in Southeast Asia, like Nepal, for example. Right now, what's happening there is crazy. There are capital controls. You cannot really move your funds outside of the country. So this is really forcing people to go and interact with Bitcoin. And usually those are the people who are considering Bitcoin as a digital gold, which is protecting their wealth from the inflation, from the government. But most importantly, it's allowing them to move their wealth outside of the country, which is the purpose of the Bitcoin. It's allowing them to move their money internationally. So those are like the two aspects I wanted to highlight, and that's why we are building Xapo, and we're building Xapo since 2013. And then there is one additional question I wanted to ask Carel. It's related to your point, what we should do in order to ensure Bitcoin will succeed as a mainstream payment method. And I hope we can work together on this one. But Carel, in 2023, the Lightning Network capacity was 5,500 Bitcoins. Right now, I believe it's around 3,000. So we have approximately 40% decrease in Lightning Network capacity. I'm not saying I'm concerned, but those are some trends which we have to highlight, that we have to think about. We cannot just dream how beautiful everything it is. There are a lot of challenges now with the Lightning. Some people are saying it's not working. Some people are saying those type of rebalances that are supposed to happen pretty much every day because the counterparties are not trusting each other. How do you see this? How do you see those challenges evolving, and what we can do in order to help them being resolved?
Yeah, look, no technology is perfect. Lightning isn't perfect either. It's got its own challenges. Ultimately, if it's not being used, then we won't face those challenges and we won't solve them. I believe strongly that we have enough smarts and intelligence to address these issues as they go along. So you mentioned the limited capacity of the Lightning Network. Yes, okay. Maybe it's going to be difficult to purchase a car. I think a car should be fine today, but maybe like to purchase like a luxury house might be difficult to do that via Lightning. That's a problem. That's a technical problem. If we throw technical resources at the problem, we can solve it. But then there needs to be people that wants to buy houses via Lightning, right? Like rebalancing. Sure, if you're running your own node and it's self-custody, it's difficult, it's tricky, but you'll be learning. And the vast majority of people will end up using service providers. The service providers will have a team of engineers and they'll solve technical problems on their side. So look, this is all one big grand experiment. But again, like you have to believe. And if you believe, then I'm sure it can work.
believe and do our best to support it, because in Xapo that's why how we build the entire Lightning experience. We are not asking anyone to rebalance anything. That's what we are taking care of. Like we are ensuring we have the right channels connections. The right routes are going to be in place when you want to transact. We just want to you either like generate a QR code, you deposit, and that's it. Or when you want to pay, you scan a QR code and you pay without taking care of anything. And that's what I was mentioning earlier. Like you should be able to transact without thinking how Lightning is working, or even without knowing how Lightning is working. And then one step further, the average person should be able to transact without even knowing they're using Lightning. So I absolutely believe we are heading towards that world. But yes, we have to keep building.
Keep building.
Thank you. Yeah, so many good points being made here, and as we can see, the future of money, it's not just infrastructure, it's not just technology, it's not just people, it's a whole number of things that have to come together. I mean, what was it you said just there, Carol? A grand experiment. I love that. I think that's exactly what we're dealing with here. So it's so interesting to see the work you guys are doing to make it all a reality. And thanks for sharing your expertise. So, I mean, thanks everyone for joining us today. Annoyingly, it probably is time to wrap it up. I'm Ian Horn. For those that don't know me, feel free to connect with me on here or on other platforms. Anton and Carel, it's been a pleasure. Anton, thanks for joining as always. And Carel, best of luck with everything you're doing at MoneyBadger. And thank you for joining Xapo Talks.
Thanks.
Once again, to everyone listening, it's been a pleasure having you here. Some of you have been with us the whole thing. So thanks. Appreciate your time. It's been an absolute joy. So until next time, we'll see you in about 2 weeks. Look forward to seeing you at the next one. Bye for now.
I'd also just like to say
yes.
thanks to everybody that dialed in and some listeners, some very interesting people here, some OGs. That date back to even when Xapo started.
And go on, Anton, you should have a final word too. I can't mute you.
Use Bitcoin as it was designed for payment.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone. It's been a pleasure. And we'll see you all soon.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.